I was in the middle of talking when it happened. A message popped up on my screen, sharp and sudden like a cold wind. Lori Evans, your job is over, right now. Please leave your computer after you finish this meeting. 12 important people from Global Connect sat across the table, all focused on my presentation. The big meeting room made every little sound seem loud. The soft hum of the air conditioning, a quiet tap of a pen, the slight rustle of expensive clothes. None of them saw the message. Only I did. My heart pounded as I paused, just for a tiny moment, before going on about our plans for the next few months. It was as if nothing had happened, as if HR hadn't just fired me while I was showing off a huge $72 million deal I'd worked on for 8 months. And as you can see on slide 9, I said, my voice steady, our plan will make things 26% better in just 6 months. 8 months of hard work ended in 8 seconds of text. I didn't beg, I didn't storm out, I finished the presentation. When the head of finance from Global Connect nodded, happy with my numbers, I simply closed my tablet, thanked them, and walked out of the room with the same calm confidence I'd walked in with. They thought silencing me during my pitch would stop me. Instead, it ruined their entire future. Because what Apex Solutions didn't get was that I had already built something they couldn't touch. My name is Lori Evans. I was 36 and had been a top planner at Apex for almost 5 years when they let me go. This is the story of how I lost my job in 8 seconds and how my old company lost everything because of it. 3 months before that big presentation, I got a strange request from Mr. Henderson, our CEO. He asked me to write a detailed plan to combine our 3 main departments. It was something people talked about, but no one ever seriously tried. I need your sharp mind on this, Lori, he'd said, leaning back in his chair during our private chat. Something new, but also something we can actually do. You know this business better than anyone. I spent 3 weeks creating that plan. It was very detailed, a 78-page document that covered everything about combining the departments, from how people would work together to how we'd talk to clients. I thought about the different ways each department worked, the tech problems of joining 3 different computer systems, and made a 2-year plan that would cause the least trouble while helping us grow the most. When I gave it to Mr. Henderson, he seemed truly impressed. This is exactly what we needed. Let me show it to the board, and I'll get back to you. 2 days later, I got an invite to a company-wide meeting. When I arrived, a new guy named Mark was standing at the front. Mark had joined Apex only 6 months ago as a deputy director, a job made just for him after he worked for one of our rivals for a short time. He had a way of making people want to follow him, but also a drive that made me feel uneasy. As he started his presentation, I slowly realized that Mark was presenting my merger plan, word for word, in many places, as his own work. My name was completely gone. In its place was Strategic Plan by Mark Thompson with help from the operations team. When our eyes met across the room, I saw not guilt, but a challenge, as if he dared me to say something. I didn't, not then, not openly. Instead, I gave a small nod, kept a professional look on my face, and took notes as if I was hearing all of this for the first time. Around me, my coworkers were nodding, impressed by Mark's ideas. Mr. Henderson stood to the side, looking happy with his new deputy's supposed genius. That evening, I started a new folder on my personal computer. I called it Horizon Systems. At that point, it was just a place to keep proof. Screenshots of my original documents with their creation details still there, emails showing I sent my work to Mr. Henderson, records of changes that had quietly removed me as the owner of the documents. I didn't know yet what Horizon would become. I just knew I needed to protect myself. The next few weeks brought small but clear changes. I found myself left out of email chains where I used to be a key player. Permissions to edit documents were changed to view only. My name disappeared from reports where I used to be a leader. Then came my replacement, a new planner named Sarah, who had been with the company for less than a year. I had actually helped her when she first started. Now she was being set up to take my place before I had even left. "We want Sarah to learn from you on the Global Connect project," my boss told me. "Mr. Henderson thinks it's time she got to work with our biggest clients." I agreed without a second thought. "She's good. I'm happy to teach her." What I didn't say was that I already knew what was happening. This wasn't about helping her grow. This was about getting ready to get rid of me. The final confirmation came when HR set up a job review meeting with me. Miss Davis, our HR director, sat across from me with a fake smile and a folder of papers I wasn't allowed to see. "We're just looking at how our teams are set up because of the upcoming merger," she explained. "Everyone's jobs are being checked." "Everyone's?" I asked calmly. "Of course," she replied, but her eyes quickly looked away. "Has Mark's job been checked yet?" I kept my voice light, just curious. A hint of worry crossed her face. "Senior leadership jobs are being checked separately." I nodded as if this made perfect sense, while understanding completely what was happening. This wasn't a checkup. This was getting ready to kick me out. That evening, I started the second part of what was becoming my escape plan. Using the rules of my contract that I had helped write years ago, rules that allowed employees to keep their work for their own portfolios, I began saving important files to my personal computer. These weren't secret client files or company secrets. I was careful about that. These were the plans I created, the roadmaps I made, the presentation styles and analysis tools that showed my unique ideas. All things I was legally allowed to keep as their creator. I also reached out to 2 old coworkers who had left Apex the year before, Alex from legal and Ben from accounting. We met for what seemed like a casual dinner, but the talk quickly got serious. "I'm creating something new," I told them after making sure we had privacy. "Something that will exist next to Apex for now, but eventually—" I left the sentence hanging. Alex, always the careful legal mind, leaned forward. "Are you asking us to help you compete with your current employer? Because that's a tricky area, Lori." "I'm not competing with them," I replied carefully. "Not yet. I'm simply building a structure that could work on its own if needed, and I'm doing it within the rules of my contract." Ben, who always liked smart moves, smiled slightly. "You're expecting to be pushed out?" It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "I'm getting ready for anything." By the time I walked into that big presentation with Global Connect, Horizon Systems was more than just a folder name. It had a legal setup, a basic way of working, and 2 trusted friends ready to start it if needed. It wasn't a rival to Apex, not yet, but it was ready to become one very quickly if things demanded it. The Global Connect deal had been my project from the very start. The huge global company wanted to completely change how they worked with customers. A massive job that would change how they talked to clients in 17 countries. I had personally built the relationship with their top team, found their problems, and designed a solution that would totally change their customer experience while bringing in a lot of money for Apex. When I arrived at their main office that morning for the final pitch, I noticed something strange. Mark was there, sitting quietly at the back of the room where we were getting ready. He hadn't been involved in any past meetings with Global Connect. "Mr. Henderson thought I should watch today," he explained with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "for continuity." I nodded, understanding what he really meant. They were already planning for me to be gone. The presentation started exactly at 10 a.m. I had practiced it countless times, knew every slide, every change, every possible question. The Global Connect leaders were interested, asking smart questions that I answered deeply and precisely. Their head of finance, a woman notoriously hard to impress, was nodding along with my money predictions. I was on slide 9, explaining the timeline when the message arrived. After finishing the presentation and leaving with my head held high, I walked straight to my car. I didn't go back to the Apex office to clear out my desk or say goodbye to coworkers. There was no need. Everything important was already safe elsewhere. As I drove away, my phone started buzzing with messages from confused coworkers who had somehow already heard the news. I ignored them all. This wasn't the time for explanations or goodbyes. This was the time to put the backup plan into action. which had now become the main plan. I drove to a small office space I had rented 2 weeks earlier under Horizon's name. Alex and Ben were already there, having received my secret signal, a simple text message saying, "Horizon activated." "So, they actually did it," Ben said as I walked in. "Not a question." During the Global Connect presentation, I confirmed, setting my bag down on what would become my new desk. Alex's eyes widened slightly. "They fired you while you were pitching a $72 million deal? That's short-sighted. And it's going to cost them much more than they realize," I finished for her. Within an hour, we had turned on all the systems we'd prepared. Horizon went from a backup plan to a real company with amazing speed. We weren't starting from nothing. We were simply flipping a switch on something that had been built carefully in the shadows. Meanwhile, at Apex Solutions, the first signs of what would become a huge change were starting to appear. The first came from Global Connect itself. Their chief tech officer, Maria Santos, sent an email to Mr. Henderson. "We were impressed with Lori Evans' presentation this morning and are ready to move forward as discussed. Please confirm that Lori will be our main contact for planning." Mr. Henderson's reply, written with help from legal and HR, was carefully worded. "We're pleased you found the presentation valuable. Our implementation team, led by Mark Thompson, is ready to proceed. Mark will be your main contact moving forward." Maria's reply came quickly. "We would prefer to continue working with Lori Evans, who has shown exceptional understanding of our needs throughout this process. Please clarify if this is possible." This exchange, which I learned about later through my remaining contacts at Apex, was the first hint that things weren't going to go as smoothly as the company had expected. The next sign came when Global Connect unexpectedly put off the contract signing meeting that had been set for the next week. The official reason was internal review, but the real message was clear. They were having doubts. While Apex scrambled to fix the situation, I made my first smart move. I sent a simple, factual email to Maria Santos. "I wanted to let you know that as of today, I am no longer with Apex Solutions. I appreciate our professional talks and wish Global Connect success with your customer changes. If I can help in the future under my new company, Horizon Systems, please don't hesitate to reach out." No angry words, no bitterness, just a clear message followed by a simple statement of my new job. Maria's reply came within 20 minutes, not to my email, but as a message to Mr. Henderson and the Apex leadership team. "We are pausing all contract talks until we fully recheck our partnership options. Please cancel all scheduled meetings until further notice." Inside Apex, the panic was instant but kept quiet. Mr. Henderson called an emergency meeting with his top team, Mark sitting importantly at his right hand. They planned how to fix the damage, made good arguments, and got ready to offer Global Connect special deals. What they didn't get was that the damage couldn't be fixed because they didn't understand what kind of damage it was. This wasn't about offering a better price or more services. This was about trust and relationships. The strong foundations I had carefully built over 8 months that they had carelessly thrown away in 8 seconds. A week passed, then another. Global Connect stayed politely distant, answering Apex's increasingly desperate calls with vague reassurances about continuing to look at options. Then came the moment that should have worried Apex more than anything else. Maria Santos asked for a meeting with me at Horizon's new offices. Our space was simple but well-designed. We had rented one floor in a building across town from Apex, furnished it simply but professionally, and set up our digital tools with amazing speed. By the time Maria arrived, Horizon looked and worked like a company that had been around for years, not weeks. "I'll be direct, Lori," she said once we were sitting in the meeting room. "We've spent a lot of time on this project, and your understanding of our needs was the main reason we were ready to work with Apex." I nodded but said nothing, letting her continue. "What happened?" she asked. "Why would they take you off our account without any handover or even telling us?" "I believe Apex is going through some internal changes," I replied calmly. "They have the right to make decisions they feel are best for the company." Maria looked at me for a moment. "That's a very polite answer." I smiled slightly. I prefer to focus on the future rather than think about the past. And what does that future look like for Horizon Systems? She asked, getting to the real reason for her visit. We're a company that helps put strategic plans into action, specializing in changing how companies deal with customers, I explained. Our way of working focuses on truly understanding client needs, making custom solutions, and doing everything perfectly. We're small but focused, which lets us be quick and dedicated to the projects we take on. What I didn't say, what I didn't need to say, was that Horizon could deliver exactly what I had promised Global Connect in my Apex presentation because the smart ideas behind that plan had come from my mind, not from Apex's systems. Would you be able to handle a project of our size? Maria asked the obvious question. We have the skills and plans in place, I assured her, and we're set up to grow our team as needed for the work. What we don't compromise on is careful oversight and being accountable. 2 days later, Global Connect officially ended all talks with Apex and asked for a formal proposal from Horizon Systems. When the news reached Apex, the impact was huge. Mr. Henderson called me personally, his voice tight with controlled anger. "What did you do, Lori?" he demanded. "Did you ruin our deal with Global Connect?" I told them I was no longer with Apex Solutions, I replied calmly. That's all. They made their own decisions based on that information. You took our client. His voice rose slightly. They were never your client, Mr. Henderson. They were thinking about becoming a client, and they chose to work with the person they trusted to deliver what they needed. We'll fight this legally, he threatened. Your contract has rules about not competing, which apply to existing clients, not potential ones, I countered. I wrote those rules, remember? The silence that followed told me he saw the trap. Apex's own legal rules, which I had helped create during my time there, had made the very path I was now using to become independent. This isn't over, he said finally. It is for me, I replied, and ended the call. The Global Connect deal was just the beginning. Within a month, 2 other big potential clients that I had been working with at Apex also reached out to Horizon. Like Global Connect, they were more interested in working with the planner they trusted than with the company logo on the business card. Meanwhile, Apex was having unexpected problems. Their engagement numbers, how often clients use their systems and documents, showed a big drop. Without my constant relationship management, existing accounts were becoming less active, less responsive, less interested in the Apex way of doing things. Inside the company, rumors about my leaving had spread, changing with each telling. Some said I had been hired away by a rival. Others claimed I had quit after a fight with the leaders. No one seemed to know I had been fired during a presentation, but everyone felt the emptiness my absence created. Sarah, the new planner who had been set up to replace me, was struggling under the weight of expectations she wasn't ready to meet. Mark, for all his charm, lacked the deep understanding of client needs that came from years of focused relationship building. The combining of the 3 departments, the one I had originally designed, was moving forward but slowly. Without the careful approach I had outlined in my original plan, the combination was causing problems instead of working well together. Teams that should have been helping each other were fighting for resources and recognition. 3 months after I left, Apex lost another big client, not to Horizon, but to a completely different rival. The client said changes in strategic support were their reason for switching. A week later, a third client announced they were rethinking their partnership. The dominoes were falling. Not because I was actively pushing them, but because Apex had removed the very person who had been holding them in place. Horizon, meanwhile, was growing carefully. We had hired only the best people who shared our commitment to excellent planning and client-focused solutions. Our reputation was spreading through the industry, not through advertising, but through results. Global Connect's transformation was going well, ahead of schedule and under budget. They had already hired us for 2 more projects. The retail chain's loyalty program change had done better than expected, becoming a success story in how to change things digitally. Horizon now had 28 employees, including 7 former Apex staff who had joined us looking for a place where hard work was truly rewarded. As I stood in that lobby, I thought about the journey. I had never wanted revenge against Apex. I had never publicly badmouthed them or told anyone how I left. I had simply built something better, something that valued smart thinking and client relationships instead of internal politics and taking credit. In the end, that was more damaging to Apex than any revenge could have been. They hadn't just lost an employee when they fired me mid-presentation, they had lost their future. I was in the middle of talking when HR fired me in front of 12 executives. I spent 8 months building that deal. They fired me in 8 seconds. They thought silencing me would kill my influence. Instead, it killed their entire future because I had already built something they couldn't touch. My reputation, my relationships, my strategic vision. And those things didn't belong to Apex. They never did. They belonged to me. When I walked out of that presentation room with my dignity intact, I wasn't ending my career. I was simply starting its next, better chapter. My name is Lori Evans, founder and CEO of Horizon Systems, and this is just the beginning of our story. I sometimes think about that message popping up on my screen. Job terminated, effectively immediately. 6 words meant to end something. Instead, they started everything. The irony isn't lost on me. In trying to silence me, Apex gave me the push I needed to find my true voice. In trying to claim my work as their own, they freed me to create something truly mine. In firing me during my biggest professional moment, they unknowingly launched me toward even greater achievements. I never needed to fight them or expose them or destroy them. They did that themselves, the moment they decided I was not important, while my work was. All I needed to do was walk away, taking with me the one thing they couldn't claim in their termination notice, my mind. Everything else followed naturally from there. 2 years have now passed since that day. Horizon has grown to a staff of 43, with offices in 3 cities. Apex still exists, but in a smaller form, having been partly bought by a bigger rival who valued their client list more than how they operated. Mr. Henderson sometimes shows up at industry events, always careful to avoid talking to me directly. Mark has started over at a new company across the country, his online profile cleaned of specific dates about his time at Apex. As for me, I no longer define myself by being against them. Horizon has its own identity now, its own way of doing things, its own place in the market. We are known for excellent planning, perfect execution, and always focusing on the client. All values I once tried to teach at Apex, now growing well in a place more suited for them. The lesson, I suppose, is that real power isn't in job titles or company authority. It's in the value you create and the relationships you build. Those things can't be taken from you with a termination notice, no matter how suddenly it arrives. They can only be carried forward, turning from stored energy into active force when the limits of a bad environment are suddenly removed. I was in the middle of talking when HR fired me. I finished that sentence and then I started writing an entirely new story, one where I was in charge. That's the thing about trying to silence someone who truly has something to say. The voice always finds a way to be heard, sometimes more powerfully than before. In firing me, Apex didn't end my influence, they made it stronger. And I didn't need to say a single word about what they did. I simply had to succeed where they were starting to fail. That has been revenge enough. The most satisfying part isn't seeing Apex struggle or watching former coworkers seek jobs at Horizon. It's building something that truly shows my values without compromise. Creating a company where smart thinking is valued, where credit is given fairly, where success is measured by what clients achieve rather than by internal politics. In a way, I should thank them for that message that slid onto my screen 2 years ago. Without it, I might still be fighting those internal battles, trying to change a culture that resisted the very values that now define Horizon. Instead, I'm free to lead according to my own vision, surrounded by people who share that vision, not because they fear disagreeing, but because they truly believe in our approach. That freedom is worth far more than the temporary discomfort of an unexpected job loss. So, if there's a lesson to this story, perhaps it's this. Sometimes being silenced is the universe's way of telling you you've been speaking in the wrong room all along. Find the right room or build it yourself, and your voice will not only return, but resonate more powerfully than you ever imagined possible. I built Horizon not to compete with Apex, but to create what Apex could never become. A company where strategy wasn't just a department, but a way of thinking, where client relationships weren't just accounts, but true partnerships, where smart contributions weren't something to be claimed, but something to be grown. That clear purpose has been our real advantage. In the end, HR didn't fire me, they freed me. And in trying to make sure I left their systems, they unknowingly launched me into creating a better one. That message was meant to be an ending. Instead, it was the beginning of everything that mattered. My name is Lori Evans, and this is my company, built with my mind, guided by my values, successful on my terms. No one can take that away with a 6-word message. No one ever will.